Welcome back to WeeklyTrek, a proud member of the Tricorder Transmissions podcast network, and presented in partnership with TrekCore.com. I am your host, Alex Perry.
What's today's date? The date.
Today's show was recorded on April 6, 2021, and is current through Star Trek Discovery Season 3, so beware of spoilers. All right, let's get into the show.
So, are we all ready?
Oh, are you doing an interview as well, Zappone?
WeeklyTrek is a 30-minute news show, bringing you the biggest stories from the Star Trek franchise. And this is a special supplemental episode featuring my interview with David Zappone, president of 455 Films and the leader of the team behind a number of fabulous Star Trek documentaries, including The Captains, Chaos on the Bridge, and What We Left Behind, the Deep Space Nine documentary. The topic of today's interview? Yes, you guessed it. We are talking about To the Journey, the Voyager documentary that recently wrapped its record-breaking $1.2 million crowdfunding campaign. David and I talk all things Voyager, including their hopes to upgrade all the episode footage used in the documentary to high definition, and the Star Trek project David is thinking about tackling after the Voyager documentary is complete. A transcript of this interview will also run at TrekCore.com, but without further ado, my conversation with David Zappone.
There's a war going on, and I'm a reporter.
So, David, I really appreciate you taking the opportunity to talk to me about this fabulously successful Star Trek Voyager documentary crowdfunding campaign. I mean, first of all, $1.2 million in fundraising is a colossal achievement. Were you expecting that kind of outpouring of support from fans?
No. I always thought that we would do as well as Deep Space Nine.
Yeah.
But I believe what's happened here is we built upon the Deep Space Nine audience, and we were savvy enough to make them all aware that this was coming. We started, the difference between this campaign and Deep Space Nine is that we had a guy named Ryan Husk, who was our campaign manager.
Yep. And
you're probably aware of him.
Former guest on this show.
Oh, great. Okay, he's terrific. And that's how I met him. I was a guest on The Seventh Rule back in November, I think, of 2020. And we were promoting the Captain's Collection, which is I'm very proud of it. Shout Factory released a Blu-ray collection of all of my Shatner.
Yeah, I've got it. It's on
awesome.
This shelf, right? It's right there.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm proud about it, and just to digress a second, instead of just releasing them on Blu-ray for the first time and with the same special features, Joe Kornbrot and myself and Shatner, we all worked together to put about 3 hours of new content on the bonus disc. So anybody you can see the entire Maurice Hurley interview, because we essentially got one of the only interviews shortly before he passed away.
Yeah.
He was a terrific guy. The entire Patrick Stewart, Grace Lee Whitney, just incredible interviews. So to make the long story short, so I met Ryan on the podcast. We were guests. I'm friends with Sirach. And I just thought, boy, this guy is very savvy. I think he'd be someone that could help us with this crowdfunding campaign. And so his advice immediately was, let's build up the anticipation. Because in the previous campaign, Spock and Deep Space Nine, we waited until the day of the launch to start, building up awareness. But he wisely advised us to take the 2 months to build up that. And we did. And my God, I mean, we made like 450,000 the first day.
Yeah, you
incredible.
Get almost the amount of the Deep Space Nine campaign just right out of the gate in the first 24 hours.
So I just want to be very clear in that this would not have happened without Deep Space Nine.
Sure.
And the fact that I think all of our work has been embraced, going back to the Captains. We've really, done some very affectionate pieces on Star Trek. And but I think it's the overwhelming love of What We Left Behind that is responsible for this success. And the fact that Voyager is a terrific show. And people love these characters. And look at the situation we're in. We now have Kate Mulgrew is back in the franchise. Jerry Ryan is back, and John Delancey, let's not forget, who was Q on several episodes. So yeah, it seems like a great time to be doing something for Voyager.
Yeah, I've sort of reflected that if you were to take the Voyager and let's say you had decided to do the Voyager documentary first and then do the Deep Space Nine documentary, I think it would have been the same, right? Voyager would have gotten 600,000 and Deep Space Nine probably would have got the 1.2 million because it's
I would think so.
Yeah.
I think that's very astute because I think because I started this crowdfunding journey back in 2015 with For the Love of Spock. And that was, I mean, I don't know how much you know about this, but, I was working with Leonard before he passed away. And he had introduced me to Adam, who I did not know. And the whole thought there was we were going to interview Leonard, contemporary and incorporate that. And then fortunately he passed away. So Adam and I took a breath. And then I think I was inspired by the Zach Braff from Scrubs had used crowdfunding to great effect. And it was a heck of a risk. I had never done it. And Adam and I decided jointly, let's give this a try, because what we both wanted was the control, because this was his father's story and his story. And we did not really see a network or a studio being involved. What we liked was the crowdfunding had the chance to give us the autonomy to tell the story in the way we wanted. And it worked. We raised $600 and something thousand. Now that's not enough to pay for the film, but it was enough for us to put the cut together, what we wanted, and then take it out and sell it. And it ultimately became very successful.
So to the journey, what stage is the documentary at now? I know you filmed some interviews on the Star Trek cruise last year before the COVID-19 pandemic, and obviously that sort of put the kibosh on the remainder of the 2020 25th anniversary Voyager convention circuit. But what are your immediate priorities for now? Money's hit the bank account, and what comes next?
Not yet. It will be soon. Soon. Yeah. Our priority, we didn't stop totally during COVID. We filmed I have to say, we also couldn't have done it without Garrett. Garrett has been such a supporter on the cruise and helped us with the launch immensely, as you've probably seen on social media and in our pitch video. And Tim Russ and Robbie and Ethan, Alice, everyone, and Connor. Let's not forget Connor. That's actually my favorite part of the just when Connor pops up. But we filmed a very extensive interview during COVID with Garrett in person, because I do not want to resort to Zoom. We were able to get a very extensive interview with Robbie McNeil before he left for Canada. He's working on Resident Alien, I'm sure as you probably know.
Yeah.
And also Brannon, we interviewed in person, Andre Bormanis. So I did not want to stop totally and lose that momentum. So we have done some interviews, but now it's akin to Deep Space Nine. We went into the crowdfunding with a lot of it, a good amount of it under our belt, but this allows us to now do this right. So we are now looking at studios. We are hopefully going to be able to build a set, as we did with What We Left Behind. And so our priority now is really logistics, figuring out where to shoot. The difference here is this cast is a bit spread out over the country. So we might need multiple stages in, perhaps something in New York as well. But that's really where we're at now, is just trying to figure out who. I mean, we have a pretty good idea of who. I mean, no one has turned us down. I intend to do similarly to what we did in what we left behind. I'm not going to limit it to just the actors. We're also we're about to interview Jerry Taylor, and she hasn't really done anything in a long time. But we're going to be traveling to her and interviewing her in person. Rick Berman has already said yes. So we intend to go, hopefully, as deep into the production side and the writing side as we did in What We Left Behind.
And for What We Left Behind, the documentary sort of honed in on several production events or story themes, the cultural impact of the show, and kind of explored those specific elements of it in more detail. You're early in the process of figuring out exactly what the story of this documentary is going to be, but are there any particular areas of interest you're already kind of chomping at the bit to dig into, you know, whether it's Kate Mulgrew as the first female captain,
Absolutely.
Jennifer Lee's departure, etc.?
Yeah, you hit it right there. It's the influence of the incredibly strong women on that show. And it's, of course, it's primarily Kate, but it's Roxanne, it's Jerry Ryan. I would argue it's Jennifer Lean in the first seasons. So yes, the impact of how that changed television and how that led to this whole revolution in STEM for women. That's an avenue that we're going to be exploring. The other thing that's interesting to me is the fact that this show was on a network. And this show launched a network. And I want to delve into that and the pressures that the producers were feeling from the network side of it. And again, I happen to be speaking to you from Paramount Studios. So I'm hoping to get the Paramount point of view as well. And so we definitely want to look into those issues. But a lot of it, I mean, you're correct in pointing out that we're early in the process, because as a documentarian, I don't want to put my opinions to the fore. It really is up to the people that were involved and where those stories take us that will determine I never go into these with a roadmap. I need to hit this and this and this. It's, of course, we have an idea of the questions that we want to ask, but it really is going to depend on where they take us, these interviews.
And you talked a little bit about some of the kind of lessons from What We Left Behind that applied towards the crowdfunding process for To the Journey. But are there any other kind of lessons from the production of the Deep Space Nine documentary that you'll be applying towards the Voyager doc to kind of, take it to a new height? Yeah,
I mean, I wish I could get into detail, but I really can't. But I did listen to your podcast last week. And I know you talked extensively about our secret goal.
Yes, we did speculate quite wildly about what it could have been.
Yeah, well, the truth is we're not sure yet because we don't own Star Trek, as you well know. It's CBS. And the good news is we are... the only reason I was even on the cruise is that I was approved by CBS. So they've already approved this project. So it's a question of, I will say to you that I'm hoping to do something with the actors themselves. And that will take a lot of negotiation and approvals, but we have very high aspirations. But what I learned from Deep Space Nine is, and this is thanks to Ira Behr and Avery Brooks, who inspired Ira, it can't be talking heads. Yeah. It can't just be interview to clip. So we need something, and the writer's room gave us that. And that was 100% Ira. I take no credit for that. The only credit I take is for thinking it was an amazing idea and helping him execute it. But I remember I was in this office probably, and he called me one day and just said, "What do you think? What if I got the team back together and we broke season 8? And of course, we were like, yes, let's do it. But the only reason that worked is because they're such a close-knit group. And that's because Ira is such an incredible leader. But what I will also say, which I've said publicly, is I'm still working with Ira. And we are now working on releasing the writer's room in its entirety. So
that's very exciting.
Yeah. So because it's interesting the way that we intercut it into the documentary, but that's only 21 minutes, I think, of the final film. they spent close to 7 or 8 hours in that room, and they took it seriously. What was amazing is from the jump, they had their, niceties and everybody, getting to, see each other again. And then boom, they were off. Yeah.
It strikes me that, in many of the same ways that some of the written reference material for Star Trek, like, of course, the iconic Making of Star Trek by Stephen Poe, that's sort of a how-to for making a TV show, that something like that would be useful, would be appealing not just to Star Trek fans, but to, fans of how to make a television show, right? And like, how does a writer's room work? I mean, where have you ever seen, a full day's worth of just fabulous writers sitting around, sort of kicking around their craft? It feels like film students could learn a lot from something like that as well.
Alex, you've hit on it, and that's Ira's feeling. That's why Ira's passionate about this, because he feels that, where else can aspiring writers see how the process works? And so our hope is that it appeals, of course, it's going to appeal to the hardcore Deep Space Nine fans, but also to the film students, to the aspiring writers. Exactly. That's our hope. Because I don't think it's ever been done in its entirety. And again, the fact is these guys took it seriously. That was it. This wasn't just, a fun exercise.
Yeah.
They really, you'll see ideas being pitched, ideas being shot down, ideas being revisited. It's fascinating to watch.
So between the moment that you decide, let's do a Voyager documentary, to today, what do you think is the most surprising thing that you've learned so far about the show or its history or the actors or anything associated with it? Like, what thus far has challenged your assumptions the most that you brought coming into it?
Certainly, people in Star Trek, I'd heard what everybody else has heard, is that, Voyager was not that great, or the cast doesn't get along. I'd heard all these rumors. And I was a fan from the jump, from 1995. I was in. So I didn't believe any of that. I knew the show was quality, and it's all, there's so much crossover between the creative from Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, Voyager. It's the same group. So I guess I was being told that, there's not a strong enough fan base for Voyager. That's the biggest surprise, is that, wow, did they underestimate the passion of these fans? And what I saw on the cruise too, we did something, and let me just touch on that cruise. I can't tell you how fortunate we are to have been on that. I think you have an idea, because as you pointed out, it was the only physical reunion that Voyager had. But more than that, ECP, the company that runs the Star Trek cruise, they're amazing, and their production value is top notch. And we've never been in this kind of environment. And to be there for 8 days, those are some of the longest days I've ever had in production. We were working 18-hour days, 18 to 19 hours, happily. But what we did is they gave us it's practically a Broadway quality theater that they have on this ship. And we just invited fans to come in and just tell us about what Voyager meant to you. And that's where I realized, wow, this runs deep, this fandom. And it's young too. It's not just people my age who watched it the first time around. It's garnered an entire, just like Deep Space Nine, an entirely new fan base from streaming. And also Voyager's been on BBC here. It's still syndicated. And I think the episodic nature lends to that. But and the metric that I've heard and everybody's heard is that I think 6 out of the top 10 streamed Star Trek episodes on Netflix are Voyager.
Yep.
Now I get it.
That's very awesome that you say that about the setup you had at the Star Trek cruise. I remember when you did the same thing for the Deep Space Nine documentary at Star Trek Las Vegas, 3, 4, 5 years ago, even at this point.
We were kicking around sitting in this office, and we came up with the Deep Space Nine confessionals. Yeah.
And some of the most affecting moments in that documentary come from those just like all-call sort of come in and tell us what you mean, what Star Trek means to you. I remember I went up and did one, but I mean, the guy in front of me had this just incredible story that he told, and I think it actually made it into the documentary. And yeah, it's like, so hopefully you will have the opportunity to do a couple more of those once we get back to in-person conventions again in the next year.
I hope so, but you remember that setup. And by the way, that was CBS that gave us that stage and creation. But, you're limited by the fact that you're in a convention hall.
Sure.
So production-wise, I mean, that was, small room. And yeah, I think we ultimately pulled it off.
Yeah.
But to have this beautiful theater and to have these people alone on stage in the spotlight, it's very emotional. So I think you're going to be very impressed by what you see. I know I was.
That's awesome. For the Deep Space Nine documentary, you worked with CBS to remaster the episode footage that was included into high definition. And for this project, you were very clear in the crowdfunding campaign that it's your intent to do that also. Assuming that the right approvals come through from CBS, are you expecting to use the same process to remaster the footage for Voyager that you did for Deep Space Nine?
Yeah. What the only impediment is that CBS Digital, the company that we use that goes back to, it's an offshoot, obviously related company to CBS, they've moved and they no longer have the enormous scanning machines to scan the 35.
That would be a problem.
That's a problem. So that's really, there is CBS, I've already discussed all this with them. I can't imagine that they're going to have a problem with it. They're thrilled with how well Deep Space Nine, and we have so much Deep Space Nine footage, you wouldn't even believe how many hours we have scanned. But yeah, it's going to be, we need to find actually a new company and a new way to do this. It's very difficult.
Yeah.
I don't want to get too deep into it because kind of actually what I would advise people to do is get the What We Left Behind Blu-ray. We do a whole panel on that process on there with Ira and my editors who can explain it a lot better than I can. But yes, the hope is to do exactly the same thing. One thing, we brought in Jonathan West to color correct the original DP. So here I haven't reached out to him yet, but I would probably reach out to Marvin Rush, who was the DP on Voyager, to perform the same function. Yeah.
And it strikes me that CBS must have been extremely happy with it, because I couldn't help but notice that at their Investor Day presentation, when they cut together a little trailer of all the Star Trek available on CBS All Access,
you noticed that
Deep Space Nine footage they used came from your documentary.
Happily, we were contacted by them, I think in November or so, and we provided the material for them. And I've heard they're using it on the Paramount Plus promo and the new promo for the Chicago Star Trek convention.
Yes, I spotted it in that too, for Star Trek Mission Chicago.
And I think they're even using some of our graphics that we recreated for What We Left Behind. So we're thrilled. Anything we can do to help Deep Space Nine and CBS get the word out there, we're in.
One of that sort of signature sequence that we're talking about, the effect shot from Sacrifice of Angels, the quite lengthy one, we know that CBS does not have ready access to a lot of those CGI effect shots because they didn't have a preservation method in place at the time.
And you couldn't even you'd have a tough time finding computers to even run those. Those were all ancient computers at this point.
So given that Voyager relied more heavily on CGI than Deep Space Nine did, is that going to make it more challenging to include some of those effects sequences that were more prevalent in Voyager?
I don't think so, because we're going to use the same brilliant effects people that we used on What We Left Behind. And we have access to a lot of those original files through Ben Robinson in the UK. Yeah. You might be familiar with, I'm sure you are. Love Ben. And, Dan Curry, the Okudas, everybody is helping us. So we're going back to the original people that worked on the show to help us recreate these sequences. So no, I don't think it'll be any more difficult. At least I hope not.
You alluded at the top of this conversation about how Voyager, at this point, it's not just the 7 seasons of the show, right? We have Jerry Ryan in Star Trek Picard. We have Kate Mulgrew showing up in Star Trek Prodigy. Do you think that at this point, the documentary is going to look beyond the end of Endgame to how some of these Voyager elements have started reappearing in modern Star Trek, or are you really just focused on the show itself?
No, absolutely. I can't imagine that we would not address the fact that I can tell you, we've already interviewed Jonathan Del Arco, who's on Picard and was on Voyager. So we already have that tie. I've already interviewed Mary Chieffo about the influence of Janeway. So inevitably, we will be connected to the present iterations. Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to limit it and just stop at Endgame, because the story doesn't stop there. I mean, look at did you see I'm sure you have the animation for Prodigy.
Yes, fabulous.
Which is terrific. What is Captain Janeway holding? The iconic coffee cup, which has proven to be one of our most popular perks.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to ask a question about that, actually, because, you offer this perk of this coffee cup, and I think there were maybe like 200 that were offered at the beginning as part of a package. And then
a lot more sold than that, yeah.
Yeah, and then it sells out within the first 24 hours, and you come back and offer a lot more. Was that, out of the crowdfunding campaign itself, after raising $1.2 million, is that the biggest surprise that you experienced?
Absolutely. And I wish I could take credit for that, but I can't. That is Paul Camuso, who runs the William Shatner store, and who I've known for years through Bill Shatner. He's a business partner of his as well. He came up with that idea. He said, Dave, one of the most popular things in Voyager, people want that coffee mug, and I know the company that made them, and we can recreate them. So that was 100% Paul. But even I'm blown away by the success. I mean, we're talking thousands now.
Yeah, I'm sure that company is blown away by the success too.
Yeah. And the T-shirts. I mean, my brilliant design team, Luke Snailham, Joe Kornbrot, we're coming up, we don't have a big, huge team. It's the same people that came up with all the What We Left Behind perks that were so popular. The Janeway shirt has proven to be extremely popular. Kate is thrilled. I don't know if you saw Nana, Visitor, and Terry Farrell. And by the way, that is one of the things that I am so... I knew it, but it really crystallized during this campaign, is the Star Trek family. Because if you look at the actors that supported us, it's not all Voyager. I've got half of the Deep Space Nine cast. We've got Enterprise actors. They're all coming together to help make the Voyager documentary, because it helps everyone. And it really, the camaraderie that all the different series have is really... I don't think there's another franchise like it. And the only thing I can ascribe it to is the conventions. I think the fact that they all get together on a regular basis and become so friendly over the years. They're all friends. So yeah, that really surprised me when I looked at our Indiegogo page, and half of the actors aren't even from Voyager.
Yeah. It is. Anytime, it's always great to see them always supporting each other. I mean, it definitely is one of the greatest
really
things
nice
about the fact that it's a franchise as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
So what's the timeline? When do you hope that we will get the opportunity to see the documentary?
Well, I've been kind of careful in my predictions, only because of COVID and what it's done. I mean, I'm speaking to you from Paramount Studios. This lot was closed down for 3 months. I could not come on the lot. We literally had to, I was informed at like 9 p.m. that at midnight, the lot would be shut down. And my Joe Kornbrot, our editor, had to rush over here and grab the computers and the drives, because otherwise we wouldn't even have had access to the footage we shot on the cruise. So we got all that. But yeah, I'm very optimistic that things are opening up. So as long as we continue on this course, I'm hopeful for fall, winter of 2022.
You heard it here first, people. Dave Zappone says if you want the Voyager documentary, go out and get your vaccinations.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, things are looking pretty good here in Los Angeles. I hope it continues.
So my last question, and it's a cheeky one, so forgive me, but
Okay.
you've done Spock, you've done the Captains, you've done Deep Space Nine, Voyager's in process. In the deepest, darkest recesses of your mind, you must have thought about what comes next after Voyager next year. You had Connor participating in the teaser video for the Voyager documentary. Any thought about turning your attention to Enterprise next?
I could be evasive and give you some kind of cheeky answer. But of course, I'm very, very hopeful that we can complete Voyager, and I would love to tell the story of Enterprise. Absolutely. Because I've become very close with those actors. And 4 seasons is, okay, it didn't go the 7, but they did amazing work in that series. And I would be remiss, I think, in stopping here. So yeah, my intention is 100% to move on to Enterprise. Yeah.
That's extremely exciting. Well, Dave, thank you very much. I appreciate the time you've offered today. Congratulations again on a record-breaking crowdfunding campaign. And, we wish you all the best of luck over the next year and a half in getting this movie out, and can't wait. I've got my ticket for the New York premiere, so I'll be there.
Awesome.
Looking forward to it on day one.
Yeah, and thank you, Alex, for all your support. I mean, I'm a fan of your website, and you've been a tremendous resource for us, and hope we continue to speak throughout this process.
Of course, absolutely, anytime.
All right, great to talk to you.